Nia and Lia weren't just best friends. They were like two threads in the same fabric, woven together by struggle, passion, and dreams. From the day they met at a small design school, they became inseparable. They worked side by side, day and night, teaching themselves how to turn fabric into art. Together, they entered the most prestigious fashion competition in the country, where the grand prize was $1 million and a once-in-a-lifetime deal with a top global brand. Round after round they soared, always supporting each other, always believing in one another. Until the final stage. It was the night before the final runway show. Just Nia and Lia, the last two standing. On the morning of the finale, Nia arrived early to center herself. But something pulled her toward the security room. Call it instinct, call it spirit, she just felt something was off. She played back the CCTV footage from the night before, and stopped breathing. There was Lia, her best friend, sneaking into Nia's workspace. The scissors, flipping, cutting, ruining the masterpiece that Nia had poured her soul into for weeks. Her throat tightened. Her chest ached. "Why, Lia?" was all she could whisper. But there was no time to cry. The show was starting. On stage, Nia's dress was unveiled. The audience gasped. It was beautiful, but clearly damaged. Torn seams. Unfinished edges. Her vision was shattered. And then, as if nothing had happened, Lia walked over with wide, innocent eyes and whispered, "Oh no, Nia. I can't believe someone did this to you. But I still believe in you. This doesn't have to be the end." Nia's hands clenched. The betrayal burned more than the fabric ever could. When everyone thought Nia would give up, she stepped forward and faced the judges. "Give me 20 minutes, she said. "Just 20 minutes and I'll show you who I am." Lia laughed coldly. "Why waste our time? You need to learn when to quit." But the judges saw the fire in Nia's eyes. "You have 20 minutes, one of them said. "Let's see your magic." Backstage, Nia didn't have a plan. She didn't have patterns. She didn't even have peace. But she had her hands, her spirit, and her pain. She cut, stitched, folded, and reshaped. She worked like someone with nothing left to lose. Exactly 20 minutes later, Nia returned to the stage. Her damaged design was now something entirely new, bold, raw, and breathtaking. A story told through fabric. A symbol of survival. The audience was silent at first. Then the applause erupted like thunder. Nia had won. She had turned betrayal into brilliance. As the trophy was placed in her hands, Nia turned to Lia, the girl she once called her sister, and said softly for everyone to hear, "You didn't just cut my dress, Lia. You cut my heart. But what you couldn't break was my spirit." The room went quiet again. Lia said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. The spotlight faded. The applause still echoed in Nia's ears, but she could barely hear it. The trophy was in her hands, yet it felt weightless. All she could feel was Lia's silence. Her best friend stood there, clapping with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. And for a second Nia wished she didn't know the truth. That she hadn't seen the footage. That she could still believe in the girl who used to help her thread needles at 2 a.m., who stayed up through storms sketching dreams on coffee-stained paper. But that girl didn't exist anymore. Later that night at the after-party, champagne flowed and cameras flashed. Everyone wanted a photo with the rising star. Nia, the girl who fixed a ruined gown in 20 minutes. But Nia's mind wasn't on victory. It was on clarity. She watched Lia float through the crowd, smiling, laughing as if nothing had happened. As if the cut threads and broken trust didn't matter. When the party died down and the cameras turned off, Nia found her standing alone under a golden chandelier. "Why?" Nia asked quietly. Lia looked up unfazed. "Why what?" "You know what." Lia's expression didn't change. "It's not my fault you left your door unlocked." Nia blinked. So that was it. No denial. No apology. Just the kind of cruelty that came with calm. "I loved you, Lia," Nia whispered. Lia smiled a little sad. "You loved the version of me that never wanted to win." Then she turned and walked away, heels echoing on marble like the final notes of a closing song. Nia stood there alone beneath the chandelier. She had won the crown, but lost the sister she once would have bled for. And deep down she knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Because some wounds don't just scar, they reopen. Especially when the person who hurt you refuses to let go. The weeks after the fashion show felt quiet. Too quiet. Nia smiled for interviews. She posed with her trophy. She spoke of perseverance and passion. But inside she was unraveling, thread by thread. She couldn't stop replaying it. Leah's footsteps. The cold whisper. That line, "You loved the version of me that didn't want to win." But fate or something like it had more to reveal. One night, Nia was walking backstage during prep for a new fashion house launch. Her heels tapped softly on the tiled floor, until she heard something. A voice. Familiar. Muffled. She stopped. A cracked door. Shadows inside. And then, Leah's voice. "Oh, urgent. I told you not to mess with the lining," Leah hissed. "Just scare her a little. Not destroy it." Another voice. A nervous assistant. "I didn't think she'd find out." Nia's breath caught. She leaned closer. Not out of vengeance, but clarity. Leah hadn't acted alone. The sabotage had been planned. Intentional. Calculated. Rehearsed. Her chest tightened, not from shock this time but acceptance. It wasn't a moment of betrayal. It was a pattern. Nia stepped back from the door. No confrontation. No drama. She didn't need to hear more. She already had enough. Later that night, while the others celebrated at the after-party, Nia stood on the rooftop, the city lights glowing beneath her like fireflies. Alone. But not broken. She pulled out her sketchbook and drew. Lines became gowns. Tears became texture. Pain became power. Because if there was one thing betrayal had taught her, it was how to cut ties without cutting herself. Sometimes it's not about revenge. It's about rising quietly, powerfully, elegantly. The world called her brilliant. Nia, the rising star of fashion. The girl who stitched triumph from betrayal. Magazine covers. TV appearances. Red carpets. But behind the shimmer, Nia was searching for something deeper. Truth. The fashion house launch was her next mountain. Bigger stage. Bigger stakes. She poured her soul into the new collection, this time guarded. Careful. Until one night during a late fitting she opened a sealed package from the courier. Inside was a sketchbook. Her sketchbook. The one that went missing weeks ago. She flipped through it with trembling hands, then stopped. It felt like ice flooded her veins. Pages were torn. Ideas stolen. Concepts duplicated. And then she saw it. A note, written in Leah's handwriting. "If they loved you for your pain, let's see how they love me for your story." Nia couldn't believe it. Leah hadn't just sabotaged her. He was using her. Presenting her stolen designs under a new identity, with a fake name. But it got worse. The next day social media erupted. A mystery designer had just signed a major deal overseas, showcasing a raw, emotional debut collection. One that looked eerily like Nia's. The name? Bulby. Short for Leah Bennett. Leah had rebranded. Reinvented herself. Disappeared from the scandal. And was now wearing Nia's pain as her ticket to global fame. Nia stared at the screen. Betrayal didn't knock twice. It came back dressed in your stolen dreams. But this time Nia wouldn't cry. He wouldn't whisper. She would respond. On the runway. If you thought it was over, it's only just beginning. The world was watching LB, the mysterious, untouchable genius from nowhere. But Nia, she knew exactly where those designs had come from. Her hands. Her hurt. Her heart. The betrayal echoed louder this time. Not in whispers but in headlines. Still Nia stayed silent. Not out of fear. But preparation. She studied LB's debut. Every hem. Every pleat. Every so-called original detail. Because it wasn't just about what was stolen. It was about what wasn't. Leah had the lines. But not the language. She wore the fabric. But not the fire. And Nia was about to prove it. Weeks later at the Global Design Gala in Milan, the stage where fashion legends were born, Nia unveiled her newest collection. But this time she did more than design. She told a story. Each look was a memory stitched in silk. A scar reimagined in satin. A heartbreak woven into velvet. The crowd didn't just applaud, they wept. They gasped. They felt it. And then came the final piece. Nia stepped onto the runway herself. Not as a model, but as the message. Draped in a gown made from shredded sketches and hand-stitched pages of her stolen book, she walked barefoot, each step a vow. She stopped at the edge of the runway, eyes blazing beneath the spotlight. And he pulled out a card. Held it high. The name on it? Designed by L.B. Lia Bennett. The crowd froze. Gasps echoed. Cameras flashed like lightning. And then Nia spoke, her voice clear, steady, unshakable. She thought taking my sketchbook meant taking my soul. But she forgot. My soul doesn't live on paper. It lives in me. Silence. Then a roar. Thunderous. Electric. Fashion editors stood. Industry legends applauded. Hashtags exploded. And somewhere across the world, Lia watched it all unfold. For the first time, in silence. But just as the lights dimmed and the music swelled, Nia felt a vibration in her pocket. A new message. No name. Just a number. And 5 chilling words. This isn't over. Not yet. Fashion headlines lit up with a surprise announcement. Maison Vérité to host a secret dual showcase. 2 designers. 1 stage. The buzz was instant. Everyone was guessing. Who's the mystery guest? But Nia didn't have to guess. She already knew. LB was coming. And LB was Lia. Backstage, Nia stood among her newest pieces. Each design had a meaning, shaped by growth, lessons, and quiet strength. He heard the whispers. The confirmation. Lia was here. This wasn't a runway show. It was a moment of truth. Nia took a breath, lifted her chin, and stepped into the light. The music started. The curtains opened. Her models moved like poetry. Every dress told a chapter. One flowed like morning fog. Another glittered like quiet courage. There were hand-stitched symbols along the edges. Reminders of what she'd overcome, not just as a designer but as a woman. Then came LB's show. The audience gasped. The outfits were bold. Dramatic. Familiar. To the world it looked like new genius. But Nia recognized the patterns. The colors. The shapes. It was her past work. Softened, rearranged, but clearly hers. The crowd clapped. The judges leaned in. It was close, too close. But Nia had saved something. Her final look. One model stepped out wearing a gown no one had ever seen before. It shimmered like melted silver, catching every light. Along the hem were tiny hand-stitched quotes. Words from a sketchbook that once went missing. Gasps spread across the room. The message was quiet, but loud enough for everyone to hear. And then one of the top judges stood up. "We have an issue," he said calmly. "These designs, LB's, match a registered collection filed 3 months ago by Nia Okoro." The room froze. Lia's eyes widened. The cameras turned to her. A reporter stepped forward. "LB, is it true you've never trained professionally?" Lia opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came. Her silence said everything. As security walked her away for questioning, Nia stood still. No cheers. No smug smile. She didn't need a spotlight. He was the spotlight. The crowd stood for her. Applause rumbled like thunder. "And Nia?" She looked up softly and whispered to herself. "You can borrow my thread. But you'll never wear it like I do." Weeks passed. The headlines moved on. Fashion blogs picked their favorites. Some praised Nia. Some questioned LB's silence. But Nia stayed focused. No interviews. No drama. Just work. She returned to her studio, not out of pressure but peace. Her hands no longer shook when she touched fabric. Her mind no longer spiraled with what. She had already won the moment that she didn't let bitterness shape her. But just when everything seemed quiet, a letter arrived. No logo. No name. Inside, a single page. Lia's handwriting. "You were right. I wore your work like armor. But I never understood the battle. I thought I needed to become you to matter. But the truth is, I never knew how to be myself. I'm leaving the industry. You deserve the light. I hope you use it well." Nia read the letter twice. Then set it down, not out of anger but calm understanding. Lia had finally said something real. Maybe too late. But real. That night, Nia stood on her balcony watching the city glow like 1,000 stars. Her phone buzzed with invites, offers, interviews. He said yes to none of them. Instead, she opened her notebook and began sketching a new line. Crowned. A collection not inspired by hurt or loss or even revenge. But by renewal. Joy. Freedom. Her first piece? A flowing white cape stitched with gold thread. shaped like open wings. Because this time, Nia wasn't rising from anything. She was simply rising. Not to prove a point. Not to answer the past. But because that's what queens do. They stand tall. They create. They move forward. And they never look back unless it's to fix their crown.